My parents chose my sister's pedicure over my valedictorian speech, so I exposed 22 years of lies, and my sister collapsed in tears outside. I'm Claire Mitchell, 22 years old, and becoming valedictorian should have been the proudest moment of my life. Instead, it was the day I faced years of family betrayal. My parents said they were too weary to attend my graduation, but social media revealed they were actually having a spa day with my sister Lily. For years I swallowed my anguish, concentrated on my studies, and attempted to earn the affection that should have been freely given. But that day, standing on the podium, something within me finally burst free. Before I tell you how my sister ended up crying in that parking lot, let me say that growing up as the Mitchell family's academically minded eldest daughter was not easy. From my earliest memories, I felt that I lived in the shadow of my younger sister. My parents, Michael and Catherine Mitchell, were successful professionals with unrealistic expectations. Dad owned his own accounting firm, while Mom was a real estate agent who specialized in luxury residences. They gave everything materially, including a wonderful suburban home, private school education, and piano lessons. However, emotional assistance was provided unequally. Abigail, Lily Mitchell, my younger sister by 3 years, appeared to effortlessly grab our parents' attention and devotion from the minute she was born. Whereas I was serious and studious, Lily was cheerful and stunning. Whereas I was uncomfortable and introverted, she was outgoing and popular. It wasn't Lily's fault, but the trend began early and only became more pronounced as we grew older. I have clear memories of my 8th grade science fair. I had spent months researching the effects of various fertilizers on plant growth, producing extensive charts, and preparing for my presentation. I took first place, earning a spot in the regional tournament. That same weekend, Lily took part in a beginner's dancing recital. She wasn't very great at dance, having only started classes a month before, but she enjoyed it. When we got home that evening, my blue ribbon was met with a distracted, "That's nice, Claire." My parents spent the entire evening raving over Lily's participation trophy and how graceful she appeared on stage, but then hung her recital photo on the refrigerator. However, my science fair certificate was hidden away in a drawer. This was not an isolated instance. As the years went, the pattern became increasingly predictable. My parents missed my debate competitions, where I consistently placed first, due to job commitments, but they made time for all of Lily's cheerleading activities. Family trips were always scheduled around Lily's social schedule, even if it meant interfering with my academic obligations. The summer before my junior year, I was accepted into an intensive writing workshop at Northwestern University, a prominent program that would help my college applications. My parents arranged our family holiday to the Bahamas for the same week. When I mentioned the conflict, my father shrugged and said, "Well, you can always find another workshop, but Lily has already made plans with her friends to come along." I sat at home alone for a week while they visited white sand beaches. Thank goodness for Mrs. Harper, my English teacher, who saw my writing potential when my parents couldn't. She suggested I apply for that workshop in the first place. When I was unable to go, she arranged for me to observe a local journalist instead. "Your words have power, Claire," I heard her say. "Don't let anyone dim your light." Those remarks helped me get through high school, when parental validation was sparse. College was my escape. I chose a university that was 4 hours away, close enough to visit on occasion, but far enough away to construct my own future. There, I met Riley, my freshman roommate, who instantly became the sister I had always wanted. Riley and I connected right away, unlike Lily and I, who had drifted apart over the years due to our parents' blatant preference. She came from a large, loving family and couldn't understand why my parents didn't contact or visit. "They're just busy," I'd say, using the excuse that had become second nature after years of repetition. Riley would give me a look that was equal parts sympathy and fury, but he never pushed. Then I met Ethan in my sophomore American literature class. We bonded over our mutual love of Steinbeck and strong coffee that could disintegrate a spoon. He was the first person to make me feel truly seen. "You know you deserve better, right?" he asked, having witnessed a particularly callous phone exchange with my mother. I wasn't sure how to answer. The concept was completely alien to me. I had based my entire identity on academic performance, expecting that if I accumulated enough prizes, degrees, and accolades, my parents would eventually recognize me. It became my coping strategy and a means of establishing my worth. Each flawless test score, each academic prize, was further proof that I mattered and deserved room, attention, and love. My coping strategy was severely tested during my first semester of college. For the first time, I struggled academically after leaving the familiar pattern of high school and encountering more difficult schoolwork. My carefully formed identity started to collapse. When the midterm scores were posted and I saw 2 B's and a C, I had a complete panic attack in my dorm room. Riley discovered me hyperventilating on the floor, convinced that my less-than-perfect grades verified what I'd always suspected. That I wasn't unique, unworthy of attention or love. With Riley's help and Ethan's encouragement, I gradually regained my feeling of self-esteem. By the conclusion of the semester, I had improved my grades, but more importantly, I had begun to detach my personal value from my academic success. However, old habits die hard. When senior year came around, I found myself working harder than ever. My application to graduate programs in journalism and creative writing was contingent on maintaining my GPA. Despite my internal development, I still desired the external approval that had been so elusive throughout my youth. When I received an email from the Dean of Students informing me that I had been named Valedictorian, I stared at my computer screen in astonishment. I am Valedictorian. The highest academic honor, acknowledging 4 years of commitment and hard work. Surely this is enough. Surely this would make them proud. The Valedictorian announcement occurred precisely 3 weeks before graduation. I recall looking at that email for 5 minutes before realizing that not only had I kept my position at the top of my class, but I would also be delivering the commencement speech. My palms trembled as I called my folks. Mom answered on the 4th ring, with a television show playing loudly in the background. "Mom," I murmured, attempting to keep my voice calm. "I have great news. I am going to be valedictorian." There was a pause, followed by, "That's nice, honey. What precisely does this mean?" I spoke carefully, despite the fact that we had attended my cousin's graduation 3 years prior, where the valedictorian role had been extensively explored. "Well, congratulations," she began, before abruptly shifting gears. "Have you heard? Lily was invited to Jennifer Lawrence's stylist assistant's birthday celebration. She is networking with some of the most significant people in the fashion industry." Before I could react, she called out to my father. "Michael, Claire has some school news. She's valid something ... Valedictorian, Mom. It indicates that I had the highest GPA in my graduating class." I heard my father's muffled voice in the background, followed by Mom's. "Your father says, congratulations. When is the ceremony again?" I swallowed my disappointment with their weak reaction and concentrated on the logistics. "May 15th, 11 a.m. I'll send formal invitations, but I wanted to let you know directly." After hanging up, I set about making unique, handwritten invites. I spent the entire evening on them, practicing the calligraphy skills I'd learned throughout freshman year. Each invitation had a personal remark. I wrote to my parents about how much it would mean to have them present for this milestone. The following weekend, I drove 2 hours home to personally deliver the invites. I planned my visit to coincide with supper, hoping for a pleasant family evening. As usual, my expectations were rapidly dashed. Lily dominated the conversation, telling anecdotes about her fashion internship and the almost famous people she met. My mother hung on every word while my father nodded gratefully between pieces of pot roast. When I finished presenting my painstakingly prepared invites, my father looked at his and remarked, "You drove all this way just to give us these? You could have mailed them." My mother had the grace to thank me before dismissing her invitation to continue asking Lily about a celebrity sighting. Before leaving that evening, I affirmed once again. "So, you'll both be there, correct?" May 15th, 11 a.m. The ceremony should last approximately 2 hours. My father nodded absently. "Yes, we have it marked down." "I wouldn't miss it, Claire." That simple sentence, "wouldn't miss it," kept me going for the following 2 weeks as I worked on my valedictorian speech. I wanted it to be significant, not simply the usual cliches about the future and possibilities. I wrote on resilience and finding your voice even when it seems like no one is listening. Mrs. Harper, who is now retired but continues to be my mentor, assisted me in refining it during weekend practice sessions at a local coffee shop. "This is beautiful, Claire," she exclaimed after my 3rd rewrite. "Your parents are going to be so proud." I nodded, anxious to believe her. 3 days before graduation, my phone rang. It was my dad. Something in his tone instantly sent danger signals through my body. "Claire, about the graduation ceremony," he started, his voice full of dismissiveness and impatience that I was all too familiar with. "Your mother and I have been thinking. And with the traffic and the lengthy ceremony, we're just too fatigued to make the trip. Too tired." The word struck me as a physical blow. "Too tired." I repeated. "But you promised. I'm the valedictorian. I am giving the speech." "Yes, and we're very proud," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But we've had a very busy month and we have other commitments to consider." In the background, I could hear my mother calling about appointments and timetables. What other commitments? I inquired, my tone barely above a whisper. Just several things, he said blankly. You understand how it is. Your aunt might be able to come though. I will have her call you. Before I could resist any further, he abruptly ended the call saying, Gotta go. Good luck with your speech. Take photographs. I sat in my dorm room, phone still clenched in my hand, as the truth set me. They were not arriving. The pinnacle of my academic career, perhaps the most significant day of my life thus far. And they couldn't be bothered driving 2 hours because they were too tired. The tears came unexpectedly, hot and furious. I curled up in a ball on my bed, my shoulders heaving with quiet sobbing. Riley found me an hour later, teary and hollow-eyed. They're not coming, I told her, my voice rough. They said they're too tired. Riley's attitude changed from concern to wrath. Too weary for their daughter's graduation, where she is the friggin' valedictorian? Are you kidding me? Ethan came immediately after receiving Riley's SOS text. He sat alongside me on the bed, his hand warm against my back. I'm very sorry, Em. That is just... There is no excuse for that. That night, the three of us convened in my dorm room, reviewing my speech. You should call them out, Riley said, her eyes filled with intense loyalty. Tell everyone how they couldn't be bothered to show up. Ethan was more measured. This is your speech, Claire. Whatever you decide to say, we fully support you. I focused on my well-crafted remarks on resilience and finding your voice. They felt hollow and performative. But, when the shock and hurt subsided, a new emotion emerged. Determination. My parents may not have been present to see my achievement, but that does not minimize its significance. Regardless of their absence, I intend to make this graduation unforgettable. I went to bed that night determined to keep to my original speech. I would not allow their rejection define this situation. Little did I realize that the next morning would offer a life-changing discovery. I awoke early the morning before graduation, filled with a peculiar mix of anticipation and anxiety. My habit drove me to check social media while still in bed, browsing through last-minute congrats from classmates and distant relatives. That's when I noticed it. My finger froze in the middle of scrolling through an Instagram story uploaded by my sister 3 hours earlier. Lily, smiling broadly, held up a champagne flute, flanked by our parents, who were both holding glasses. The caption stated, "Family spa day so needed this." I blinked, thinking I had misread. However, the timestamp was clear. 2:13 a.m. Meaning they had posted this the night before, while I was crying in my dorm room about their alleged weariness, and they were organizing a spa day for Lily. My hands trembling, I scrolled through the rest of Lily's story. Photo after photo showed them relaxing with massages, facials, and a costly meal at an elite restaurant I recognized from their city's downtown. In one particularly devastating shot, my mother and Lily dressed in matching plush robes, my mother's arm around Lily's shoulders, both smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Mother-daughter goals." My mother wrote below it, "Best day with my baby girl." The treachery wounded so deep that I could not breathe. They not only refused to attend my graduation, but they also lied about being too exhausted. They were not fatigued at all. They merely wanted to spend the weekend pampering my sister. I took screenshots of everything and forwarded them to Riley without comment. Her instant response was, "Those manipulative liars. Claire, I am deeply sorry." But sorry didn't begin to hide the growing hollowness in my chest. This wasn't just another setback in a lifetime of failures. This confirmed what I had always suspected but attempted to reject. I simply did not mean as much to them as Lily did. I tried to call my sister, jabbing at the screen with more force than required. She didn't respond, so I sent a text instead. "I saw your spa day posts. It's interesting timing, given that Mom and Dad said they were too weary to attend my graduation tomorrow." She responded 20 minutes later, "Don't be theatrical. They'd been very stressed and needed to relax. Not everything is about you and your schoolwork. School-related topics." My valedictorian graduation was reduced to school stuff. I was still staring at her dismissive message when my phone rang and my grandmother called from Florida. "Claire dear, I just wanted to wish you good luck tomorrow. I'm sorry I can't make it, but my hip just won't comply with the travel." I swallowed hard, moved by her call. "Thank you, Grandma. I understand. Your folks must be really excited. I was just chatting to your mother yesterday about their dinner plans on Saturday night at some nice restaurant Michael has been wanting to visit, apparently." The pieces clicked into place. They weren't just having a spa day. They also had dinner plans for the entire weekend. They were having a full family weekend, missing one member. Me. "What about dinner reservations?" I questioned, my voice tight. My grandmother hesitated, thinking she had said something incorrectly. Oh, I assumed you knew. They mentioned a pleasant family supper following your sister's. Oh dear. After an uneasy finish to the call, I sat immobile, clutching the phone in my hand. The full extent of the betrayal was still settling in. They didn't just skip my graduation for a day spa. They had planned a whole weekend of activities that specifically excluded me. Something snapped within me. Years of suppressed hurt, making excuses for their actions, and telling myself that if I simply worked more, they'd see me, all crystallized into a harsh, clear certainty. I was done being invisible. I took out my laptop and opened the document containing my graduation address. The lines I had carefully drafted suddenly appeared foolish, almost pathetic in their idealism. Without hesitation, I started a new document and began writing. Words flowed out of me, propelled by a lifetime of neglect and this final, terrible betrayal. I wrote about invisibility, the anguish of being overlooked, and the harm created by conditional love. I scribbled until my fingers ached, my eyes burned, and the sky beyond my window darkened. Then lightened again. Ethan found me scribbling at morning, with empty coffee cups strewn about my desk. "Have you been awake all night?" he inquired, anxiety engraved on his features. I nodded, then saved the document and printed 2 copies. I rewrote my speech. He picked up a page, lifting his brow as he read. "Claire, this is raw. Very powerful. But are you certain? This could have a major impact on your connection with your parents." I met his stare steadily. "What is the relationship? Which one has me as an afterthought? The one in which they lie to my face?" Ethan sighed and ran a hand over his hair. "I understand it. I do. You have every right to be angry. Just make sure this is what you want. You can't go back on what you've said in public." His anxiety moved me, but my resolve never wavered. I stored both versions of my speech in my graduation folder. "I've been invisible all my life, Ethan. Tomorrow they'll finally see me." Even if they weren't physically present, I understood how these things operated. The ceremony would be live-streamed. Someone, such as my aunt, a family friend, or my grandma, would be watching. And they would inform my parents. For once, they'd have to acknowledge my suffering. They'd have to see me. Graduation morning arrived bright and beautiful, a postcard-perfect May day that appeared to mock my inner struggle. Riley was already up when I awoke from a fitful sleep, setting up breakfast on our small dorm room desk, coffee, muffins, and fresh strawberries. "Fuel for the valedictorian," she said with a strained smile. Even though my stomach was clenched with fear, I managed to grin, admiring her efforts. We prepared together, her talk filling the stillness while I carefully applied cosmetics, attempting not to appear as deeply distraught as I felt. The graduation gown was ugly on everyone, boxy and shapeless, but I made an additional effort with my appearance underneath. A new navy blue dress I had splurged on weeks previously, when I still thought my parents would see me in it. Ethan arrived just as we were pinning our crowns on, with a bouquet of sunflowers and a small, wrapped surprise. "You look amazing," he said me, kissing my cheek. "These are for you. Open the gift later, when you're alone." I hugged him firmly, thankful beyond words for his constant presence. We were about to depart, when we heard a knock at the door. Mrs. Harper stood in the hallway, lovely in a flowered frock with her silver hair swept into a shiny bun. "I hope I'm not intruding," she told me, but I couldn't miss my star pupil's big day. I cried as I hugged my old instructor. "You came all this way?" 4 hours in the car with my husband snoring beside me, she admitted with a wink. "Wouldn't have missed it, and I brought you something." She gave me a tiny velvet box. Inside there was an ancient silver pen, with exquisite engravings down the barrel. "It was my grandmother's," Mrs. Harper revealed. "She was a journalist in the 1920s, when women weren't supposed to have such ambitions. I thought you should have it, one boundary breaker to another." The gesture almost undid me. While my parents couldn't be bothered driving 2 hours, my high school English instructor had driven twice as far to encourage me. We arrived at the ceremony with Riley, Ethan and Mrs. Harper, forming the family I chose rather than the one I was born into. The graduates were guided to our seating area, and guests found seats in the audience. I couldn't help but search the crowd, some tiny irrational part of me hoping to see my parents despite everything. Instead, my gaze was drawn to the empty seats in the reserved section, where 3 chairs should have been available, teasing me with their absence. The ceremony began with the typical processional, the university president's welcome address, and several acknowledgments. I tried to concentrate, to stay present, but my thoughts kept wandering to the speech in my folder. 2 versions, 2 options. The original, safe version about resilience and discovering your voice. The new one is raw and honest, Born of last night's sorrow and years of collected hurt. Which one would I go with if the opportunity presented itself? As the university dean approached the platform to announce me, my heart pounded so hard that I was sure everyone around me could hear it. It is my great pleasure to introduce this year's valedictorian, the dean said. With the highest grade point average in the graduating class, numerous academic honors including the Preston Journalism Award and the Mercer Creative Writing Fellowship and acceptance to Columbia University's prestigious master's program in journalism, Claire Mitchell. The audience applauded as I approached the podium, my sweaty hands clutching the folder. I looked at the camera set up for the broadcast, knowing that someone from my family could be watching. I pulled out both copies of my speech and placed them side by side on the podium. I made my decision as I looked out at the sea of faces. Supportive friends, proud families, and faculty members who had guided my academic career. 4 years ago, when we started this journey, I said, putting the initial speech to one side. Many of us came here searching for something. Knowledge, certainly. Skills, of course. But for many of us, myself included, we were searching for visibility. My voice grew stronger with each word as I abandoned the script I'd been practicing for weeks and spoke from the heart. We wanted to be seen. To matter. To have our efforts acknowledged and our presence valued. I stand before you today as your valedictorian, an achievement that represents countless hours of work, sacrifice, and perseverance. But I also stand before you as someone who has learned that external validation, grades, awards, even this tremendous honor cannot fill the void left by those who should see you. But choose not to. The crowd became silent as they realized this wasn't your ordinary inspirational graduation speech. Riley nodded encouragingly, Ethan leaning forward intently, and Mrs. Harper watched with quiet pride. Many of us have experienced invisibility in various forms. Perhaps you weren't the favorite child. Perhaps your accomplishments were minimized while others were celebrated. Perhaps you were told explicitly or implicitly that your best was never quite good enough. Heads nodded throughout the audience. This resonated with more people than just myself. I spent years believing that if I just achieved more awards, higher grades, prestigious positions, I would finally be seen. That the people who should love me unconditionally would finally acknowledge my worth. What I've learned, what this university experience has taught me, is that visibility begins with seeing yourself clearly first. The words came from a deep, honest place within me, released after years of inhibition. I talked about making genuine connections with friends who celebrated rather than diminished my accomplishments. I discussed mentors who recognized potential where families simply saw ordinary. And then I came to the conclusion of my speech, which I had composed in the dead of night. Today, as I look out at this audience, I see empty seats where my family should be. They told me they were too tired to attend, though social media reveals they found energy for other celebrations this weekend. A murmur spread through the throng. And that's okay. Because their absence has taught me the most valuable lesson of all, that I am enough. With or without their validation. That my achievements are worthy of celebration, even if they're not the ones doing the celebrating. I gazed directly into the livestream camera, knowing that my words would eventually reach them. So, to everyone who hasn't shown up not only today, but throughout my life, this one is for you. Not as an act of rage, but as a statement of independence. Your absence molded my history, but it won't shape my future. There was utter quiet for 3 heartbeats before the audience roared. My fellow graduates rose, clapping with fervor, implying that many of them had also felt invisible at some point in their lives. Faculty members nodded, and several wiped away tears. Mrs. Harper was openly crying, holding her phone up to capture the scene. I returned to my seat in a stupor, and the rest of the ceremony was a blur of handshakes and diploma covers. Following the recessional, I was approached by classmates and instructors who congratulated me not just on my academic achievements, but also on the boldness of my speech. You said what so many of us have felt, one classmate told me, his eyes filled with sorrow. Thank you for being our voice today. The university president shook my hand and stated, "That was not what I expected, Miss Mitchell, but it was exactly what needed to be said." Throughout it all, I felt strangely light. How could the pain not persist? But speaking my truth had freed something that had been locked within me for years. My phone was already vibrating with notifications. The speech definitely made an impression, as evidenced by footage shared on the university's social media sites. For the time being, I ignored the devices and chose to rejoice with the individuals who had supported me. Riley, Ethan, and Mrs. Harper took me out to lunch at a neighboring restaurant, where they celebrated my accomplishment with sparkling cider and shared their favorite moments from the ceremony. For a few hours, I let myself enjoy their company and the accomplishment of graduating, putting thoughts of my family to the sidelines. But as the party came to a close and we prepared to return to campus for final dorm checkouts, I knew the consequences was coming. I just didn't expect it to start in the auditorium's deserted parking lot, where I had returned to grab the graduation cover that I had unintentionally left behind. The post-graduation celebration at Giovanni's Italian restaurant was all I could have hoped for: warm discussion, real laughing, and the reassuring presence of people who truly cared about me. Riley continued refilling my water glass and slipping more breadsticks onto my plate despite the fact that I hadn't eaten much in the previous 24 hours. Ethan's hand remained reassuringly on mine throughout the dinner, with his thumb occasionally brushing against my knuckles in silent support. Mrs. Harper regaled us with anecdotes from her own college graduation decades ago, making us laugh despite the emotional weight of the occasion. For those 3 hours, I allowed myself to simply be present and enjoy the milestone I had reached, rather than worrying about who wasn't there to see it. My phone, silent and tucked into my purse, periodically lit up with notifications, but I ignored them all. This moment belonged to me and the family I had selected. Mrs. Harper only mentioned the internet reaction as we were about to depart, after we had settled the bill and gathered our luggage. "Your speech is receiving a lot of attention, Claire." The institution released a footage on their social media pages, and it has already been shared hundreds of times. "Have you seen any of the comments?" I asked, feeling anxious. "Overwhelmingly positive," she informed me. "You touched a nerve with many people who have felt overlooked or unappreciated. You give voice to something universal." I nodded, still not ready to check my phone. "I should get back to campus," I muttered. "I left my diploma cover in the auditorium, and we need to finish clearing out our dorm room by 5. We said our goodbyes in the restaurant parking lot and promised to keep in touch. Mrs. Harper was driving home that evening, but she had me pledged to phone her the next week to discuss my future move to New York for graduate school. Ethan had to work the evening shift at the university bookstore, but he would stop by the dorm later to help with final packing. Riley returned to finish cleaning our room, while I detoured to the now empty auditorium to grab my forgotten diploma cover. My grandmother received the first call as I drove into the practically empty parking lot. I answered, bracing myself. "Claire, your speech was beautiful," she said, her voice quivering slightly. "Though I think you've caused quite a stir within the family." My throat clenched. "They saw it?" "Your cousin Melissa was watching the broadcast and instantly contacted your mother. I assume things are... It's tense right now." I thought it was the understatement of the century. "Are they angry?" I inquired, suddenly feeling very young and defenseless, despite the day's empowerment. "There is certainly... something," my granny explained delicately. "But Claire, I want you to know that I am proud of you not only for your academic achievements, but also for voicing your mind. It could not have been easy." Her words warmed something icy within me. "Thank you, Grandma. That means a lot." After promising to call her shortly, I ended the call and went through my other notifications. 6 SMS messages from extended family members who watched the web video. My father left me 2 voicemails that I was not expecting to hear. Lily sent a volley of increasingly irate texts. Lily's most recent text reads, "How could you embarrass our family like this? Mom is actually in tears because of what you said. You've destroyed the whole weekend." I turned the phone off again and slid it back into my purse. The theater was unlocked, but strangely quiet after the morning's festivities. I quickly spotted my diploma cover, which had been placed on the chair where I was sat. As I turned to go, a movement near the exit attracted my attention. Lily stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her face flushed with rage. My sister looked just as she always did, flawlessly dressed in designer pants and a top that probably cost more than my entire graduation attire. Her hair was freshly styled, most likely as a result of the spa treatment she had received while I was preparing for the most critical day of my academic career. "What are you doing here?" I inquired, genuinely surprised to see her. "We drove 4 hours to deal with the mess you've created," she said. "Mom and Dad are at your dorm looking for you." My stomach fell when I thought of my parents addressing Riley. I got out my phone to warn her, but Lily hadn't finished. "Claire, how could you be so selfish? How petty and vindictive. You've embarrassed our entire family only to gain attention." The claim was so ludicrous and backwards that I chuckled, a shrill, humorless sound that rang around the empty auditorium. Selfish? Am I selfish? That's impressive coming from someone who has had our parents' full attention for 22 years. Lily rolled her eyes theatrically. "Here we go again with that poor, neglected older sister shtick. Claire, you choose to be boring. You chose books and studies above having a real personality. It is not my fault that I am more intriguing than you." Years of accumulated pain and fury erupted like a shattered dam. "Interesting. Do you think that's what this is about? Allow me to remind you of a few things, Lily. When I was 16 and won the state writing competition, my parents did not even read my essay. When you received a C+ on a history assignment the following week, they hired a private tutor and brought you shopping as a consolation. When I was accepted to this university on a partial scholarship, they scarcely noticed it. When you opted to take a gap year to discover yourself in Europe, they covered the entire cost. The trend has been consistent with each birthday, Christmas, and family vacation. I was not asking for special treatment. Just equal treatment. Lily's defensive posture weakened slightly. That is not fair. They have always backed you. Really? Name one instance where they prioritized me over you. Once they opted to attend something essential to me, even if it conflicted with your schedule. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to provide an example. They couldn't make the 2-hour drive to watch me graduate as valedictorian, Lily. However, they had enough of energy for your spa day. I brought out my phone and showed her screenshots from her own Instagram posts. Do you know what the worst part is? The act of lying. If they had simply said, "We've decided to spend the weekend with Lily instead," that would have been honest. Cruel, but honest. Instead, they claimed they were too tired while arranging an entire weekend of events that specifically excluded me. Something changed in Lily's gaze, a flash of doubt crossing her cheeks. I did not. They didn't notify me they weren't attending your graduation. They just stated that they wanted a family weekend. Her speech trailed off as the consequences became clear. Family weekend, without the whole family. We stood in quiet for a long time, the weight of years of uneven family dynamics weighing on us. When Lily spoke again, her voice was smaller and less certain. They always gave the impression that you didn't want to be included, that you preferred books over family time, that you thought you were superior to us with your academic achievements. I shook my head in astonishment. Is this what they told you, Lily? I spent my entire life desperate to be included and noticed. Do you understand why I worked so hard in school? Because it was the only time someone paid attention to me. Because good grades were the only thing that ever caused Dad to say good job to me. Lily's eyes welled with tears and her meticulously applied makeup began to smudge. They always made me believe I was superior than you. Somehow more worthy of their time and attention. I never asked for it. I never wanted that responsibility. Her defenses collapsed completely and tears streamed down her cheeks as she sank into a nearby chair. That was exhausting, Claire. Always the favorite. Always have to be perfect. Always aware that Mom lived vicariously through every social achievement and Dad assessed his success by how popular I was. I stood stunned, witnessing my always confident sister's breakdown. This was not the confrontation I was expecting. A school security guy peered into the theater, concerned about the noises of distress. Is everything okay in here, ladies? Lily immediately wiped her eyes, leaving behind black mascara streaks on her cheeks. We're fine, I replied. Just having a graduation day conversation. He seemed suspicious, but nodded and walked away, leaving us in tense stillness. Lily gazed up at me, her face raw and vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. They always made me feel like I was better than you, she said quietly. I never asked for that. I was taken aback by her candor. For the first time, I contemplated how our parents' favoritism might have affected Lily, the golden child, who was burdened with unreasonable expectations and was forever accountable for satisfying our parents' social goals. Would you like a ride back to campus? I finally asked, unsure what else to say. Lily nodded, clutching her beautiful purse with shaky hands. My automobile is at the shop. Dad dropped me off to find you while they were going to your dorm. We walked to my car in silence, each engrossed in our own thoughts. We didn't say anything during the short drive back to campus. The silence wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't wholly hostile either. It was more akin to the calm that follows a rainstorm, when the air is still charged but the immediate danger is over. I reflected on how this might have been the first honest talk we'd had in years, if ever. It would not fix everything. Nothing could reverse 2 decades of skewed family dynamics overnight. However, it appeared that something had shifted, a tiny breach in the facade that had defined our relationship for as long as I could remember. As we approached the dormitories, I noticed my sister's tear-stained face and recognized that this confrontation had taken an unexpected turn. The repercussions of my speech was only beginning, and I still had to face my parents. But, for the first time, I wondered if Lily could be an ally, rather than an adversary in the inevitable family reckoning. I hardly slept that night. After the emotional meeting with Lily in the theater, returning to the hostel had its own set of complications. My parents had certainly been there, but when they discovered my room was empty, they had returned to their hotel and instructed me to phone them right away. I did not. Instead, I finished packing with Riley's help, said Ethan a temporary farewell, and checked into a cheap motel nearby. I needed time to ponder everything before confronting my folks. The following morning, however, brought an unhappy surprise. When I went to the hostel to pick up my last few boxes, I discovered my parents waiting in the corridor outside my room. My mother's face was tight with repressed fury, and her normally flawless makeup appeared slightly overdone, as if applied in haste. My father stood with his arms crossed, his expression a mix of annoyance and impatience, the look he usually kept for service workers who inconvenienced him. "Finally," my mother remarked when she saw me. "We've been waiting for nearly an hour. You haven't answered your phone." I unlocked my door and debated whether to let them in. "I was busy," I responded, imitating her casual demeanor. "Graduating, moving out. You know, the events you were too exhausted to attend." My dad's nostrils flared. "Do not use that tone with us, young lady. After that trick you pulled yesterday, you should apologize for not being sarcastic." I laughed. A brief, unfunny sound. "Stunt? You mean telling the truth about being repeatedly disregarded throughout my life? Was that a stunt?" I pulled the door open to find Riley already inside, sorting the rest of our shared stuff. Seeing the tension, she began to excuse herself, but I grabbed her arm. "Please stay," I asked quietly. Having a witness would prevent this confrontation from devolving into their usual gaslighting. My parents entered, my mother's gaze sweeping sharply across the half-filled room. "Your speech was completely inappropriate," she said without prelude. "You embarrassed our family in front of hundreds of people. We've had calls from family and acquaintances, and even your father's business associates viewed the video online." "I'm sorry you feel humiliated by the truth," I said, shocked at my own composure. "Though I notice you're not denying anything I said." My father took a step forward, adopting the frightening position that had often silenced me throughout my youth. "What do you think you've done with your little performance, except than making your mother cry and causing unnecessary family drama?" I met his stare steadily. "It was not a performance, Dad. It was the sum of 22 years of being treated like I was less important than Lily, of having my successes ignored while her most small ones are highlighted, of being lied to and barred from family gatherings." My mother let out an annoyed sound. "You are exaggerating as usual, Claire. We have supported you as much as your sister. We paid for your college, right?" "Partially," I corrected. "Remember how my scholarship covered most of it?" I went to my desk and took out a folder I had made months ago, never expecting I'd use it. "But since you brought it up, let's talk about support." I opened the folder and began arranging its contents on my desk. Birthday greetings from previous years, family calendars, and financial data that I had surreptitiously acquired. On Lily's 16th birthday, you got her a car. For mine, I received a $50 bookstore gift card. When Lily needed a laptop for school, she chose the latest MacBook Pro. I received a refurbished device that was 2 years older. Every Christmas, her pile of gifts was significantly larger than mine. My mom rolled her eyes. "Are you seriously comparing gift values? How materialistic." "It's not about the money," I responded. "It's about the message these disparities convey." "But, okay, let's talk about non-material help." I took out a hand-drawn calendar. I documented every school event for both of us during my junior and senior years of high school. Lily had 47 events, you attended 45 of them. I had 39 events and you attended 8. And only when they didn't interfere with anything Lily owned. My father's face had become progressively crimson. "This is ridiculous. Did you keep records? Like a prosecutor preparing a case against your own family?" "I kept records because you two gaslight me every time I bring up the disparity in how you treat us," I said calmly. "Just like you're doing right now." Riley had gone to the window, trying to seem unobtrusive but plainly uncomfortable as the confrontation unfolded. My mother sensed her suffering and tried to use it. "This is a private family matter. Maybe your pal should go out." "No," I replied firmly. "Riley stayed. She's been more like family to me in the last 4 years than any of you." The words hit like a physical blow. My mother's face collapsed briefly before regaining her composure. However, my father only became angry. "After everything we've done for you," he said, his voice rising, "we've sacrificed and given, and this is our reward. A public disgrace, and now these unfounded allegations." Something in his tone reminded me of my father saying almost the same thing when I asked why I couldn't attend an academic summer program while Lily went to an expensive performing arts camp. Suddenly a pattern that I hadn't noticed before became clear. "This isn't about me at all, right?" I asked slowly. "It's about you, Dad. Your personal insecurities. You dislike my intellectual accomplishments because they show your own unfulfilled potential. His face changed from red to white in an instant. My mother stood between us. Claire, that's enough. But the truth had solidified with absolute clarity. Dad, weren't you the smartest one in your family? The person who was meant to attend college has become something amazing. But you didn't. You settled for a solid but unexceptional job, and every academic success I had reminded you of your past shortcomings. My father turned away, his hands locked into fists by his sides. His quiet validated my idea more than any denial could have. I turned to my mother. And you're the pretty, popular girl who peaked in high school. You live vicariously via Lily because she reminds you of yourself at that age. You pour all of your unrealized social goals into her, dressing her up like a doll and pushing her to be everything you believe you could have been. My mother's carefully built facade had broken. You have no idea what you're talking about, she said quietly, but without conviction. I have every idea, I responded. I've been observing this dynamic for 22 years. You are not subtle. A knock on the door ended our standoff. Lily stood in the doorway, her eyes red from sobbing, yet her expression seemed oddly determined. I thought I'd find you all here, she began, walking in without waiting for an invitation. Lily, my mother said brightly, reaching for her favorite daughter. We'll be done here soon, and then we can go to brunch as planned. Lily didn't enter our mother's hug. Instead, she came to stand with me, an unexpected gesture that caused everyone in the room to freeze. Actually, Mom, I believe we need to conclude this conversation. All of us. My parents exchanged worried looks. This was not part of their plan for their daughters to be together rather than divided. There's nothing to discuss, my father stated firmly. Claire is being dramatic and trying to make herself the center of attention as usual. No, Dad, Lily said, her voice as firm as I'd ever heard it while addressing our parents. Claire's telling the truth. You've always favored me and we all know it. The hush that ensued was absolute. My mother recovered quickest, chuckling uncomfortably. Lily, honey, that's not true. We love you both equally. Then why can't you name a single time you chose Claire over me? Lily offered an answer. Why can't you explain why you lied about being too tired for her graduation when you were actually planning a weekend of activities with me? My father took a different approach. We're not having this conversation in a dormitory with an audience, he remarked, glancing at Riley. This is family business. Fine, I replied, startling everyone. Riley, would you mind giving us the room? I think my family needs to have an honest conversation for once. Riley paused, obviously anxious about leaving me. Are you sure? I nodded, and she took her bag, caressing my arm gently as she went. I glanced back to my parents as the door closed behind her. Let me be very clear about something. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your validation, or your attention, or your love, though it would have been nice to have had those things growing up. What I do need is honesty. No more gaslighting. No more excuses. No more pretending that the favoritism doesn't exist. My mother sat firmly on the edge of my bare bed. We never meant to make you feel less loved, she added, and I thought I heard genuine regret in her voice. You were always so independent, so self-sufficient. Lily needed us more. No. Lily says. I didn't need you more. You needed me to need you. There's a difference. Our mother appeared to be in distress, while my father remained upright, his stiff posture indicating physical agony. What exactly do you want from us, Claire? An apology? Fine, we're sorry you felt neglected. But this public shaming was completely unnecessary. I didn't do it to shame you, I told you straight. I did it because after 22 years of silence, I needed to speak my truth. And I think, a part of me hoped that if I said it loudly enough, publicly enough, you might finally hear me. My mother cried several times, alternating between genuine remorse and manipulative self-pity. The conversation lasted nearly an hour, alternating between denial, anger, bargaining, and brief moments of genuine reflection. My father never fully acknowledged his resentment of my academic success, but he also did not deny it when pressed. What astonished me the most was Lily's unwavering support. The sister who had always benefited from our parents' attention was suddenly my biggest supporter, pointing out patterns I'd missed and standing firm when our parents tried to minimize or ignore my experiences. Little had been definitively resolved by the time our parents finally left. With vague promises to think about everything and work on family communication, they were still angry about my speech, defensive about their parenting choices, and unwilling to truly acknowledge the damage they'd caused. But something had changed anyway. For the first time in my life, I told my parents the complete truth without flinching, apologizing, or backing down. And miraculously, Lily had appeared alongside me. When the door closed behind them, Lily and I exchanged stunned looks in quiet. "That was," she said. "Intense," I concluded for her. "Thank you for backing me up. You didn't have to do that." Lily shrugged, an unusually nervous expression from my normally confident sister. "I did though. Everything you said was true. I've known it for years. But it was easier to accept the favoritism than to question it." She sat on the desk chair, looking unexpectedly youthful and vulnerable. "I'm sorry, Claire. I should have said something sooner. I should have pushed back when they dismissed your achievements or made excuses for missing your events." I slumped against the wall, emotionally drained yet somehow lighter than I had felt in years. "It wasn't your responsibility to fix our parents' behavior." "Maybe not," she said. "But I could have been a better sister." Lily stated that she had always been privately terrified by my intelligence and academic achievement, while I confessed to envying her social ease and our parents' evident devotion. We discussed how our parents' poisonous dynamic had created us both. Me as an achievement-oriented perfectionist seeking affirmation, and Lily as a people-pleaser frightened of losing our parents' conditional acceptance. "I got offered a job at the Atlantic, by the way," I told her after a gap in conversation. "A junior position in their digital media department. I start next month in New York." Lily's eyes widened. "Claire, that's amazing. Why didn't you say anything earlier?" I gave her a pointed look, and she nodded in agreement. "Right. Because Mom and Dad would have found a way to make it about something else." "Exactly." "Well, I'm genuinely happy for you," she said. And she was right. Maybe we could get coffee sometime when you're settled in New York. I've been thinking about moving there too, actually. There are better opportunities for fashion marketing than back home. For the first time in years, if not our whole lives, I felt a genuine connection with my sister. Not the competitiveness our parents had nurtured, nor the bitterness that had festered, but the possibility of a true friendship based on honesty and mutual respect. As we completed packing up my dorm room together, I realized that while my graduation speech hadn't magically restored my relationship with my parents, it had created an opening for something I hadn't anticipated, an opportunity to know my sister as an ally rather than a rival. The summer after graduation flew by as I prepared for my new life in New York City. I found a tiny apartment in Brooklyn that I could almost afford on my entry-level publishing salary, packed up the few possessions I'd accumulated during college, and said temporary goodbyes to Ethan and Riley, who promised to visit as soon as possible. My parents contacted only twice during those 3 months, for quick unpleasant discussions packed with frivolous questions about my relocation plans and a deliberate avoidance of any mention of my graduation speech or our subsequent fight. I kept the calls short, neither antagonizing them or claiming that everything was now resolved. This new phase of our relationship required limits, which I was still trying to create. The surprise was Lily. My sister texted me almost every day, sending me everything from apartment listings she thought might suit me to funny memes about sibling relationships. When she came to New York for a fashion industry networking event, we spent the weekend exploring the city together, discovering shared interests and perspectives that had been buried beneath years of parental manipulation. "I always thought you hated me," she confessed as we sipped pricey coffee at Central Park. "I never hated you," I said sincerely. "I hated being compared to you. I hated being found wanting. But that wasn't your fault. My editors valued my meticulous research and clean writing style, and my colleagues appreciated my willingness to assist with last-minute fact-checking. My first months at the Atlantic taught me more about journalism than 4 years of college combined, and for the first time in my life, my perfectionism paid off. Before leaving for New York at Ethan's gentle insistence, I found a therapist who specialized in family dynamics and childhood emotional neglect, Dr. Monroe. She didn't offer easy solutions or quick fixes, but she did provide invaluable tools for processing the complex emotions surrounding my family. "Healing isn't linear," she reminded me during one particularly difficult session, following a tense phone call with my mother. "There will be steps forward and steps back. The important thing is that you're now aware of the patterns and actively choosing how to respond rather than reacting from old wounds." My communication with my parents was limited and carefully managed. I gave polite text updates about my employment and answered to their occasional messages, but I kept a safe distance to safeguard my still fragile emotional boundaries. My mother tried to reassert her power multiple times using guilt. "We hardly hear from you anymore." Or, "After everything we've done for you." But I refused to utilize these techniques. My father, according to style, retreated into icy detachment, interacting mostly through my mother, with the exception of the occasional work-related question disguised as fatherly curiosity. The first holiday season away from home was both liberating and disorienting. Riley invited me to join her family for Thanksgiving, which was eye-opening in its normalcy. Parents who asked their children questions and actually listened to the answers. Siblings who argued but ultimately supported each other. And conversations that didn't feel like navigating a minefield. Christmas came an unexpected development. A letter from my father, handwritten on his personal stationery, rather than dictated to his secretary, as the majority of his correspondence was. Claire, I've been thinking about what you said at graduation and afterwards, about my own academic setbacks and how they might have influenced my connection with you, and while I don't agree with all of your characterizations, I understand that there may be some truth to your argument. My father never came to any of my school activities, and I used to tell myself that I was different. However, I may have repeated more patterns than I'd want to admit. This isn't an excuse, but rather an observation that took me months to confess to myself. The letter went on for 2 pages, not exactly an apology, but the closest my father had ever been to serious self-reflection. It finished with an invitation. If you're willing, I'd want to have a man-to-man talk without your mother present. Some topics may be better to discuss directly. I read the letter several times, my feelings alternating between cautious optimism and entrenched suspicion. After discussing it with Dr. Monroe, I decided to meet my father during his impending business trip to New York. We met at a quiet restaurant near his hotel, the neutral territory making it easier to keep my emotional stability, and the conversation was awkward at first, with both of us falling back on safe topics like my profession and his business. But as the lunch progressed, something extraordinary happened. My father began to talk about his own youth, about the strain he faced as the smart one in a blue-collar family, and about his decision to forego his academic goals in favor of the stability of accounting. When you started winning all those academic awards, he said, eyeing his water glass rather than meeting my gaze. It stirred up regrets I thought I'd buried decades ago. That's not an excuse for how I behaved, but it might help explain it. It wasn't a full reconciliation because too much damage had already been done, but it was a starting step toward a more honest relationship. My mother approached reconciliation in her own unique manner, sending a care package to my apartment with my favorite childhood dessert, homemade chocolate chip cookie bars, and a photo book I'd never seen before. It featured dozens of photographs of me throughout my childhood, including receiving prizes, acting in school plays, and studying at my desk, moments I had no idea Mother had captured. Inside the front cover, she wrote, "I see you. I always did, even when I didn't express it clearly." Like my father's letter, it was not a complete recognition of the past or a pledge to change, but it was a gesture that would have been impossible before my graduation speech brought our family's dysfunctional dynamics to light. As winter gave way to spring, I found myself blossoming in unexpected ways. Free of the constant striving for parental approval, I discovered interests and talents I'd never explored before, such as a knack for photography, an enjoyment of rock climbing, and a taste for spicy food that my mother would have dismissed as too exotic. I built friendships based on genuine connection rather than convenience or strategic value, and I even started dating again. Though I maintained regular touch with Ethan, our relationship blossomed into something greater than friendship, while yet allowing for our different travels. Perhaps the most unexpected development was my growing interest in mentoring young writers. The Atlantic had a summer internship program, and I volunteered to assist college students with both the technical aspects of digital journalism and the emotional challenges of entering such a competitive field. "You're good at this," my supervisor said after watching me deal with an especially apprehensive intern. "You have a gift for helping people find their voice." The irony was not lost on me. After years of striving to be heard, I developed a flair for assisting others in expressing themselves. Almost exactly 1 year after my graduation, I received an email from the editor of a major literary magazine. They were doing a special issue on family dynamics and had found a recording of my valedictorian speech online. Would I be interested in writing an expanded essay on those themes? The potential to turn my personal pain into something that could aid others going through similar challenges was too valuable to pass up. The essay I wrote, titled Invisible Daughter, Finding Voice in the Shadow of Conditional Love, became the most widely shared piece from that issue, and I received hundreds of messages from people who saw their own family experiences reflected in my words, who found validation and hope in my journey toward self-acceptance. Mrs. Harper, my high school English teacher, sent me a message that stood out because she believed in me even when my parents didn't. "I always knew your words would change lives," she wrote in response. "I just never anticipated how many, including your own." That spring, Lily relocated to New York to work for a fashion marketing agency 10 blocks from my office, and we started meeting for weekly lunches, gradually developing the friendship we should have had all along. "Do you think Mom and Dad will ever really change?" she inquired one day as we ate pricey salads in Bryant Park. I paused before responding. "I think they're capable of small changes. Dad's trying, in his own limited way. Mom swings between genuine effort and falling back into old patterns. But they're in their 50s with decades of established behaviors and unexamined issues. I don't expect dramatic transformations. So what does that mean for us? For our relationship with them going forward? Lily asked seriously. I think it means we set clear boundaries. We accept whatever positive changes they can make without expecting them to become entirely different people. We build our relationship with each other separate from them, and most importantly, we break the cycle. We don't carry their dysfunction into our future families. That conversation solidified the most important lesson I'd learned throughout this journey. While we can't choose our families, we can choose how we respond to their limitations. We can either perpetuate unhealthy patterns or disrupt them. We can stay trapped in childhood roles or create new ones for ourselves as adults. There were still unpleasant phone calls with my parents, old hurts reappeared, and I found myself seeking external affirmation rather than trusting my natural worth. But as the months passed, such times became less frequent and less strong. I was no longer the unseen daughter, desperate to be seen. I had discovered my voice, and with it, a sense of tranquility I had never imagined possible. As I reflect on that important moment at the graduation stage, I understand that by expressing my truth and refusing to remain silent about the anguish of being missed, I freed not only myself, but everyone in my family, from the roles we'd been confined to. Our relationships are still works in progress, but they are now based on honesty rather than pretense, reality rather than carefully managed illusions. So, if you're watching this and see your own family in my tale, if you've ever felt invisible, secondary, or somehow less worthy of love, I want you to know that your experience is valid, your grief deserves to be acknowledged, and your voice should be heard. The bravest thing we can do is speak our truth, even if it upsets the cozy lies we've been telling ourselves. Has your family ever made you feel invisible or unimportant? Thank you for watching, take care and best of luck. Perhaps today's narrative has prompted you to ask new questions or reminded you of old recollections. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create new stories that connect us all. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These types of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you loved this tale, please share it with your friends. Your comments and opinions are always appreciated, as they inspire us to create even better content. Every tale has its own distinct perspective, and our goal is to comprehend everyone's point of view and make our material diverse and approachable. Stories like this remind us that everyone's journey through life is different, and hearing other people's stories teaches us new things. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are very significant to us. If you loved this video, please leave feedback. Our goal is to generate content that illuminates your mind and provides you new ideas every time. Even if you've seen this video previously, we still value your opinion since it allows us to enhance our content and provide our viewers with new perspectives. Today, what we witnessed was only a sample of the numerous stories published on Reddit and around the world, serving as a reminder of how we all try to comprehend life by sharing our experiences with one another. This movie is just one example of how we use storytelling to connect with others and learn about different aspects of life. We hope to continue sharing stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more fantastic content. Your support keeps us going, and we will work hard to bring you more thought-provoking and touching stories. Until next time, take care, and remain curious.